I'm very concerned that our society is much more interested in information than wonder.
Behind the warm smile and gentle voice of Fred Rogers lies a story few knew about, a heartbreaking tragedy that has left fans stunned and searching for answers. The man who taught generations about kindness and love faced challenges far darker than any episode ever revealed. Today, we uncover the untold pain behind the legend of Mr. Rogers, revealing a side of him that will touch your heart like never before. The Untold Origins. The 20th of March, 1928, found Fred Rogers being born in the city of Latrobe, Pennsylvania. An affluent family was his family. Because his father was a successful businessman, the family resided in a large brick house that had everything that a child could possibly desire. Books, toys, and music are all examples. On the other hand, Fred did not feel fortunate. Due to his health issues, he was confined to the house for the majority of the time. Fred stayed inside as the other children went outdoors to play, observing the scene from the window. Even though there was a lot of comfort around him, he still felt isolated. That feeling of isolation molded him. His heart was able to experience what other people felt as a result of this. He used that experience later in life to assist children in experiencing a sense of being seen and appreciated. Fred was frequently ill when he was a child. His asthma required him to remain at home for several weeks. This was an attempt by his mother to make things better. In addition to playing the piano with him, she knitted puppets for him. Nevertheless, the days were long, and the feeling of isolation did not go. He also gained weight and was shy. In class, he didn't speak up very often. While he did not have a large number of pals, he was a people watcher. He was also aware of their feelings, the joys, the sorrows, and the worries that they experience. This ability to speak quietly would later enable him to communicate with millions of youngsters in a manner that they could actually comprehend. When Fred was approximately 11 years old, he experienced something that he will never forget. Some boys from his area started dubbing him Fat Freddy. One day, they chased him for 11 blocks, yelling and laughing. Fear gripped Fred entirely. He was unable to take another breath. A scar was left behind by that humiliating and hurtful incident. It also provided him with a reason to live. Later on, he would discuss bullying on his show to his audience. It was not in the capacity of a teacher, but rather as someone who had survived it. Children learned how to cope with grief, how to be kind to others, and how to advocate for themselves through his teachings. One individual was responsible for making young Fred feel as though he was loved totally. Fred McFeely, his grandfather to be exact. Each and every Sunday, Fred went to the farm that his grandfather owned. There, he had a sense of liberation. He was able to go around in the fields, discover the natural world, and be himself. When Freddie was younger, his grandfather would tell him, "Just by being you, you make my day very special." These were words that remained in his mind forever. During times when he felt like he was invisible, they provided him with strength. Mr. McFeely was the name of a character that he later gave to his program in honor of the individual who made him feel that he was unique simply by virtue of his being. High school was a time of transition. As Fred joined Latrobe High School, he was a reserved and overweight young man who was still carrying the burden of being bullied. Nevertheless, a student by the name of Jim Stumbaugh reached out to him and became his friend. Fred was able to emerge from his shell thanks to the friendship. Through participation in school activities, he became aware of his potential for leadership. Fred was elected president of the student council by the time he was in his final year. His involvement in the arts included music, drama, and public speaking. He was able to shed some pounds, become more self-assured, and at long last started to have faith in himself. As he made his way from being a shy young child to being a leader, he gained an understanding of the significance of friendship and goodwill. Fred began his schooling at Dartmouth College in 1946. However, after a year there, he decided to transfer to Rollins College, which is located in Florida. That decision altered the course of events. Fred finds music. Rollins was where Fred discovered music. He researched it in great detail and created more than 200 pieces. It was in 1951 when he received his degree in music composition from the Magna Cum Laude institution. A piano sonata was the subject of his senior thesis. There was music that was played outside of the classroom. Eventually, it would be via his program that it would fill the hearts of youngsters. His peaceful tunes evolved into instruments that assisted children in comprehending their emotions, fears, and love. While Fred was at home on a visit in the same year, he was exposed to television for the very first time. Slapstick, pies, and faces were all common elements in the show that he saw. He didn't chuckle at all. It was upsetting to him. He had the idea that this might turn out to be something lovely. How come it is being thrown away? That instant had a profound impact on him. There was more to it than a fleeting idea. It was an epiphany that totally altered my life. It was at that moment that he made the decision to enter the world of television, not with the intention of becoming famous, but rather to use it to assist children. He was able to see the power of the media and the possibility for it to be used for good through that one black and white screen. Fred made the trip to New York in 1951 and began working at NBC shortly thereafter. He worked behind the scenes on famous shows, including Your Hit Parade and The Voice of Firestone. Props, scene changes, and live production were all areas in which he assisted. Every week, NBC produced more than 1,000 hours of live shows. Fred gained a lot of knowledge, despite the fact that it was a chaotic situation. All the same, something didn't sit quite right. It was clear to him that money and sponsors were in charge of everything. The lack of heart, the advertisements, and the noise were all distracting to him. Because of that event, his choice was quite apparent. No, he had no interest in appearing on commercial television. Therefore, Fred decided to leave that planet in the year 1953. It was not in his interest to pursue ratings. He desired to assist children in developing. In addition to attending a seminary in Pittsburgh, he also attended classes with Dr. Margaret McFarland to learn about child development. Faith was not the only topic he was learning about. He was gaining knowledge about children, their feelings, and the ways in which he could communicate with them in a manner that was actually meaningful. The way was not typical at all. A majority of individuals chose one thing. The media, psychology, and spirituality all overlap. After that, his show would become unlike anything else that was broadcast on television. In the same year, Fred relocated back to Pittsburgh and became involved in a new endeavor known as WQED, which was the first learning television station in the United States to be supported by the community. In 1954, the station began operations from a mansion that had been transformed. They were short on resources and had a small number of personnel, but they had tremendous ambitions. While working at WQED, he was not only the sole puppeteer, but also the co-producer of the film Dragon Live, in which he also performed the lead part. This was not a Hollywood production with a large budget. There was nothing more than Fred silently toiling away behind the scenes, bringing something magic into existence. Some of the puppet characters that he created include Daniel Striped Tiger, King Friday the 13th, Queen Sarah Saturday, X the Owl, Henrietta Pussycat, and Lady Elaine Fairchild. He also created a family of puppet characters. A good number of them were named after actual people who were familiar to him. The people he worked with, his friends, and his wife. The show was designed to be straightforward, serving only as a medium for presenting short films aimed at youngsters. Rogers, however, transformed it into something far more significant. He constructed complete narratives and imbued each puppet with a distinct personality. As a consequence of this, the Children's Corner was awarded the Sylvania Award for Best Children's Show produced in the local area in the year 1955. Even NBC broadcast it on a national scale. Despite this, Fred chose not to be in the spotlight. The puppets and the music were the ones who did the talking for him. At the same time, Rogers did something that the majority of people would not have the courage to do. In the seminary, he studied. During the year 1955, he began his studies at Pittsburgh Theological Seminary while simultaneously maintaining his full-time position at WQED. Indeed, he did not give up his day job. Instead, he managed to squeeze in classes during the breaks he had for lunch. This dual existence lasted for a total of 8 arduous years. It was not uncommon for him to sprint from the studio to the seminary and back again, often without even changing out of his work attire. Additionally, he and his co-host Josie Carey traveled to New York City in order to perform live shows on a weekly basis. Despite this, he continued to make progress in his studies. He did not intend to pursue a career in preaching. He didn't want a pulpit. What he wanted was to use television to lift up children's hearts and minds. That's why, when he finally graduated in 1963, he didn't head for a church. He stayed in the studio. But something extraordinary happened that same year. Fred Rogers was ordained as a Presbyterian minister, not to lead a congregation, but to serve children through television. It was a first-of-its-kind ordination. The church saw what he was doing and realized he didn't need 4 walls. And through that camera, he reached millions. Every song, every puppet scene, every moment was his way of sharing a message of love, except appearing before the U.S. Senate. Fred Rogers appeared before the United States Senate Subcommittee on Communications in 1969. He was directly questioned by Rhode Island Senator John Pastore, a man who is known for his sternness. "This is what I give. I give an expression of care every day to each child to help him realize that he is unique." After just over 6 minutes, Pastore admitted that he had goosebumps listening to Rogers speak about a show, and then he readily agreed to give PBS to requested Bundy. In 1969, the Public Broadcasting Service, PBS, was having trouble getting off the ground. The concept of public television was still in its infancy at the time, and people were skeptical of its effectiveness. That narrative was so smitten with Rogers that he even sought a copy of the show because he wanted to view it himself in a particularly poignant moment. In his explanation, Rogers explains that drama does not necessarily involve individuals hitting each other over the head. Rather, it can simply demonstrate how frightening it can be for a child to have a haircut. He argued that true drama could be as simple as watching 2 men work out their anger in a constructive way. He was tough to interview. Mr. Rogers was always in high demand as a topic for interviews for the most of his career. However, he was also regarded as a really difficult individual to have an interview with. How come? To put it simply, he was just very kind. What we witnessed on Mr. Rogers's Neighborhood was not an act. He was actually that pleasant, both on screen and off. His disposition was friendly and curious. This made it extremely difficult to conduct an interview with him because he frequently veered the conversation in a completely different direction while attempting to make friends with the person who was conducting the interview. As a result of the fact that Rogers was always more concerned in how his interviewer was doing, it was quite challenging to get him to open up and describe himself. People who were interviewed by Rogers frequently reported that he had a significant impact on them. After he had finished the chat, he would tell the person doing the interview that he had liked meeting them. And then he would present them with a small photo album that had photographs from the time that they had just spent together. Additionally, it was not uncommon for him to contact interviewers years after the event had taken place, simply to inquire after their well-being. Inside Fred Rogers's quietly disciplined life. Not only did Fred Rogers keep to a strict vegetarian diet, but he also did not smoke or drink alcohol. He wasn't only concerned with his health, he frequently stated, "I don't want to eat anything that has a mother." Fred Rogers took great care of himself. He would rise up every morning at 5 o'clock and swim for several hours before praying and beginning work. Rogers also had a workout routine that would be severe for a young man, let alone a gentleman in his 60s and 70s. He would swim for several hours before beginning labor. Mrs. Rogers thought that the number 143 was a very unique number because he discovered a special pattern in it, which he referred to as, "Will you be my neighbor director?" Mr. Rogers's morning routine consisted of looking at the scale in his bathroom and seeing the number 143. 143 was a form of hidden numerology that meant 143, according to Morgan Neville, who described it to him to CNBC. "My affection for you is due to the fact that Rogers emphasized that only one letter is required to express I, 4 letters are required to say love, and 3 letters are required to say you won in the story." There was a morning when Rogers got up and noticed that he weighed 143 pounds. He made the decision to do everything in his ability to be reminded of love every morning, and according to he was successful. At the height of his renown, he lived at the Fred Rogers Center for 30 years, maintaining a weight of 143 pounds. Mr. Rogers received a great deal of fan mail, and he made it a point to respond to each and every one of them. It is a common belief that he responded to each and every piece of fan mail he ever received, which is rather difficult to believe given that he must have received thousands of letters in his lifetime. However, it appears that he did, in fact, write back to each and every letter. His responses were not merely generic niceties or canned responses, rather, they were deeply heartfelt and personal. He made sure to convey to his fans how much their messages meant to him, and he made sure to express his pride in them and his happiness at the prospect of working with them. Officer Clemens. Francoise Clemens, who played the role of the resident police officer in Mr. Rogers' neighborhood, was initially hesitant to accept the role after being approached by Rogers. He told NPR, "I grew up in the ghetto, and I did not have a positive opinion of police officers. I really had a hard time putting myself in that role, so I was not excited about being Officer Clemens at all." Clemens eventually accepted the role, and he became one of the first African-American men to have a recurring role on a children's television show. In the documentary that was released in 2018, Won't You Be My Neighbor, he stated that there were black children who watched the show, and they required a black figure who would not disappoint them. In one of the early episodes, Mr. Rogers invited Clemens to soak his feet in his pool alongside his own. This may not seem like a big deal, but Rogers and Clemens remained friends throughout their lives, and Rogers even revisited the scene in Clemens's final episode in 1993. Clemens asked Rogers what he was thinking about all those years ago as they were soaking their feet. Rogers smiled and said, I was just thinking of all the different ways people say I love you. Do you love being able to record your favorite shows so that you can watch them whenever it is convenient for you? If you do, then you should give thanks to Fred Rogers. When videocassette recorders, VCRs, and Betamax were first introduced to the market in 1984, one of the most appealing features of these devices was their ability to record live programming. However, network executives became extremely concerned because they believed that taping shows using this technology was an infringement of copyright. As a result, a lawsuit was filed, which eventually reached the Supreme Court of the United States. During this time, numerous experts and witnesses were called to testify, and among them was Rogers. Meanwhile, large production studios and television networks fabricated the case in order to cover up a perceived loss of revenue. As he expressed it, "I just feel that anything that allows a person to be more active in the control of his or her life in a healthy way is important." This public television personality, who made relatively little money, stated that he had absolutely no objection to fans taping episodes of his show. It is undeniable that Rogers' statements had an effect, and his evidence was regarded as being significantly important in the process of arriving at the historic decision. At the end of the day, it was decided that tape recordings are considered to be fair use, and that the manufacturers of those devices could not be held accountable for copyright infringement. Hooked on horror. Zombies were his thing. What comes to mind when you think of Mr. Rogers is this one that is somewhat startling. Your mental image of him is probably of him sitting on a comfortable couch somewhere and reading a book while wearing one of his favorite sweaters. Most likely, you do not imagine him hunkering down to watch a zombie movie that will send chills down your spine. When the late director George A. Romero was just beginning his career, he had a difficult time finding someone who was willing to give him a chance. It wasn't until he met Mr. Rogers realized that the ambitious filmmaker needed some experience working with the camera. He was offered a position on the Mr. Rogers neighborhood crew, and the majority of people who are currently employed in the media industry in Pittsburgh worked for Fred. Fun fact, all of us began our careers with Fred. It is one thing to give someone a job, but did Fred Rogers ever watch any of Romero's horror movies? Michael Keaton was also a crew member on the show Mr. Rogers' Neighborhood when he was just starting out in his career. The answer is true. He reportedly saw both Night of the Living Dead and Dawn of the Dead, and he reportedly enjoyed both of them. Romero questioned Rogers about his profession, and Rogers reportedly responded by saying that it is a lot of fun. George, tough lessons, quitting NBS. Fred Rogers believed that it was essential to provide children with the resources they would require in order to help them negotiate the most challenging times in their lives. During his time on Mr. Rogers' Neighborhood, he discussed a wide variety of subjects, and he was not hesitant to touch upon some of the more difficult and unexpected aspects of life. In a particular episode, Prince Tuesday escapes from his family's house. People properly think that it is because he simply is unable to cope with the continual arguing that occurs between his parents at home. As the story arc continues to unfold over the course of several episodes, people will continue their hunt for Prince Tuesday. When he is located, a fellow student even informs him that she was hoping for the worst, and that the children at home were presumably also concerned about the same thing. Instead than avoiding the subject of death, Fred Rogers confronted it head-on whenever it was brought up. He instructed them on how to deal with challenging feelings such as fear, embarrassment, and rage during the entirety of the presentation. He was aware of the fact that children needed to figure out how to function in the real world, and he instructed them on how to be honest, courageous, and to take responsibility for their emotions. After Fred Rogers was ordained as a minister in 1963, he decided to take a break from living his life for the church and instead pursue a career in the arts. He was contracted to compose theme music for a number of series that aired on NBC, and it is likely that he would have been able to live a life of reasonable comfort on that pay for the rest of his life. But he couldn't shake the feeling that something about the job wasn't quite right. It was alleged that he believed the programming was impacted by the fact that the network relied on advertisements and sales. Additionally, he had the impression that the things he was watching on television were an affront to his own personal views. At one point, he stated that he witnessed individuals tossing pies at one another's faces, which he considered to be an extremely humiliating conduct. If there's anything that disturbed him, it was one person belittling another. That really got him crazy. As a result of his decision to put his anger to positive use, he quit his job and began concentrating on the creation of programs for children. He was of the opinion that television programs aimed at younger audiences should not contain any advertisements and should instead focus on addressing genuine concerns, such as instructing children on how to deal with the emotions and situations that they encounter in their daily lives. He was required to make the trip to Canada in order to secure his first significant opportunity with the Canadian Broadcasting Corporation. He developed an early version of the show, which he called Mr. Rogers, while he was there. Over time, he relocated back to the United States, which is where the first episode of Mr. Rogers' Neighborhood was shown on February 19, 1968. His legacy. Fred Rogers was awarded with several awards in his lifetime and was appropriately inducted into the Television Hall of Fame in 1999. In 2002, barely a year before his death, he was granted the Presidential Medal of Freedom by President George W. Bush. Fred Rogers delighted and taught children for more than 30 years with his outstanding public television program, Mr. Rogers' Neighborhood. David Newell, who played Mr. McFeely on Mr. Rogers' Neighborhood and acted as an associate producer on the show, once mentioned to Rogers that many children were terrified of the Wicked Witch of the West from The Wizard of Oz, portrayed by the late actress Margaret Hamilton. Newell advocated inviting her on to the show so kids could see that she was neither wicked nor a witch in real life. Rogers cherished the concept. As soon as he made contact with Hamilton, he inquired as to whether or not she would be interested in appearing on the show in order to explain to children that the Wicked Witch was merely a part that she had portrayed in a movie. Immediately after receiving the offer, Hamilton accepted it without any hesitation. She even wore her old attire for the very final time during her participation on the show in 1975, so that she might be able to communicate in such a manner. Since Fred Rogers was born in the vicinity of Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania, it should not come as much of a surprise that members of the local community would want to pay tribute to his memory. 2016 marked the beginning of the circulation of a petition on change.org. The objective was to collect a sufficient number of signatures in order to persuade the Allegheny County Airport Authority and the city of Pittsburgh to formally adopt the name Fred Rogers International Airport for its international airport. Bob Kurlick, Vice President of Media Relations for the Airport Authority, gave the following assurance to Pittsburgh Magazine. "We appreciate the interest in the airport and creative ideas from travelers, and we know that Fred Rogers occupies a special place in the hearts of people from Pittsburgh and people from all over the world. Because of that, Mr. Rogers is already part of the experience there. The way we hear it, it sounds like a lost chance." When Fred Rogers passed away in 2003 at the age of 74 from stomach cancer, he was mourned by successive generations of his audiences. Unbelievably, the extraordinary individuals who work for the International Astronomical Union came up with the ideal method to commemorate his life and legacy. They gave an asteroid one of his names. If his story moved you, Don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe for more untold truths about the icons we thought we knew. Click on the next popping on your screen now.